In this video, you're going to hear some questions from growers asked by UConn's own extension, Nicole Davidow, and I'm going to provide you with some answers, and hopefully you find these relatable questions that you may have had and the answers helpful to mitigate problems and also to ensure you can maximize your overall tomato yields.
Hello, I am Nicole Davidow. I'm here with UConn Extension's Vegetable IPM program, and I'm talking with Matt.
Hi, my name is Matt Debacco, and I'm also working with UConn Extension here, giving you some fact sheets and some information to help you through the growing season to hopefully reduce the amount of problems you have, or at least mitigate those problems when you do see them.
And we're out here in the heat of the summer, in July, end of July, and we're talking about tomatoes. And so a couple things that we're looking to talk about include just what growers see out in the fields when they're scouting this time of year. What are some common problems, common challenges that they have?
So I'd say right now, common challenge being end of July, early part of August is, of course, the heat. So we're seeing that with both our traditional row crop, outdoor grown, as well as our high tunnels, as well as our caterpillar tunnels. So how do growers go about mitigating some of that? Now, it might be really hard to, reduce the temperature we have here, but really making sure you're doing a lot of the setup correct, making sure you're choosing the right varieties for the area you're growing in, as well as making sure your irrigation is on point. So if you have any sort of delay in irrigation, you can have splitting and cracking that can easily develop. So talking about varieties, if we're growing in a structure that's a little bit height limiting or an area of a field that's really windy, determinate varieties are a great consideration. What does determinate mean? Well, that means the plant's only going to get up to a determined or a predetermined height. Your indeterminates are going to keep growing. Great for a high tunnel because you've got more height, number one, but also you've got protection from the wind. So those are considerations that you want to make. When you're selecting the specific variety within those subcategories, you want to try to look for disease resistant. This is a great way of being preventative. Yes, you may not have fusarium in your soil, or I might say you might not think you have fusarium in your soil. Having varieties that have natural resistance to them is only going to make your management easier. So that's a great way to start, is pick the determinate, indeterminate, and then go through, look at some of the varieties, look at some of the disease resistance that they have, and that can really be a great way to help mitigate problems that you would have and make your management a little bit easier.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Matt. And now, just in terms of folks that might be interested in increasing their yield of tomatoes or increasing the longevity of when they're getting tomatoes throughout the season, because it is such a limited season here up in the Northeast, do you have any recommendations for what that might look like?
Sure. So we're looking at increasing yield. That's where we see the popularity of high tunnels and caterpillars come in. You're able to start your plants a little bit earlier, so you're able to get a harvest that's a little bit sooner. You're able to bring those tomatoes to market. So that extends your season. So when we're looking at, increasing your yield, yes, you could increase the pounds per plant, but you could also increase the duration for which you harvest from. And that's why we see the popularity of these structures. Now, they're not with their own problems. We've got to consider, soil health and managing some of that, but at the same time, we are looking at maximizing that growing season that is limited here in southern New England. Now, for your row crops, again, looking at taking a soil test, making sure your pH is dialed in, making sure you're addressing those basic plant needs as far as staking goes, managing weeds. All of those may not sound flashy and glamorous, might not be the next fertilizer to set the yields on fire, but doing those things, little things well, will help improve plant health and help improve your overall growth, which of course will hopefully lead to better yields.
And you touched on soil health there a little bit more. Anything to add as it relates to soil health, especially with folks that might be using the same space year after year to grow tomatoes? Anything that they should consider when they're thinking about putting nutrients down or just thinking about growing tomatoes year after year in the same space?
So when we're looking at tomatoes or any crop being monocropped or grown in the same spot again and again, it's not really great for the soil health. So rotations are important. Now, if you're unable to rotate, if you're on a smaller plot of land, utilizing winter cover crops can be a way of kind of getting a pseudo rotation in there, in the sense you're getting different roots there. Now, when we say rotations, we're not talking about rotating tomatoes with eggplant, which to a grower might sound different. We're looking at rotating out of families. So for example, you've got your solanaceous crops, which are your eggplants and your tomatoes. You've got your cucurbits, which are your melons and your squashes. You've got your monocots, which are like your corns. Those kind of your major three areas here where we're looking at making modifications to your soil and doing true rotations. So being mindful of that is really important. Yes, you might be able to get 1 or 2, maybe even up to 3 years, so that gets pushing it before you start building up disease. And the problem is once you build up disease, it's really hard to mitigate that disease. So rotating before you see a disease is really important because that can help reduce the chance of ever getting that disease. So by using resistant varieties, by using crop rotations, those are all great ways to mitigate those issues. Now, this is true also for high tunnels. You might want to have a tomato tunnel. Well, hopefully you maybe could get a second or third tunnel that you could rotate your tomatoes from one tunnel to another tunnel. So those are other ways to consider rotations. Even though you can't move necessarily the structure, rotating what plants are planted in those structures are a great way to start to reduce the chance of seeing problems, because once you see those problems, it's very hard to control those issues.
Matt, what's your favorite kind of tomato?
So if you ever look at tomatoes, there are many, many different varieties. Everyone's going to have their favorites. I might be a little bit older variety. I like the Better Boys as my comparison. They're a hybrid, and I always say they grow taller than a Better Boy, ripen sooner than a Better Boy. It's kind of like the gold standard as far as like a gauge to see those new varieties that you do see, how they perform quote unquote better. Well, what is better for one grower may not be better for another grower. So having those nice comparisons is great. Always having one that you're familiar with. Trying new varieties is great, but having those standards to go back to act as a source of comparison can really improve your growing practices.
Well, thanks so much for meeting me out here on such a hot, sunny day. It's been great talking tomatoes with you, and we look forward to looking at more tomatoes together.
Excellent. Glad to provide some of the information. Look at the UConn fact sheets. We've got some coming out. It's on tomatoes, on cucurbits, and always reach out to Extension with any questions we have. We're the ones out in the field. We're the ones seeing everything. So hopefully we can relate grower practices that can make you more effective and mitigate problems before they become big issues. Utilize our expertise, the knowledge that we've accumulated on these super hot days to improve your yields and harvest.